Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Pinkies Out Coffee Break. So what this little session is I get to interview someone really awesome in usually the local coffee scene. And today I've got somebody called Filip Nikolic. And I said that right because we discussed how to talk about his name earlier on today. So Filip he's been in the coffee scene for a little while in Vancouver. I believe starting life in Cafe Citadella, which he was a part owner of. Then he moved on to managing Our Town, which is an awesome coffee shop, kind of Kingsway and Broadway area. He has now branched off to that and taken all of his knowledge, and he's created a company called Cafeclub Consulting. And what he does is he helps pretty much anyone, and as far as I'm aware, and you can help me out, Filip, on this one and tell me if I'm wrong, but he helps them build and grow coffee shops using all the wealth of his knowledge that he's got. So, Filip, welcome to my little show.
Thank you for having me, Tom.
Did I screw any of that up? Did I get that right?
That was perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So today what we're going to do is we are going to talk to Filip about how to, from the ground up, build a coffee shop. So we're going to do this in kind of almost like a mock scenario kind of way, where I'm going to pretend that I am somebody who wants to start a coffee shop. And we're going to talk about the steps that are involved to get to the stage where I can open that coffee shop, and then onwards with, things like community and things like fostering a great atmosphere inside of that coffee shop. So, Filip, I am thinking about opening a coffee shop. And the first thing I want to do is I want to understand kind of where the right place is in my city. And let's just call it Vancouver because that's the one that we all know. I want to know where the best place to open that coffee shop is. So what would you recommend as the first steps for me to start looking?
In terms of location, it depends on a number of different factors. So you also have the balance of rent price versus volume, and cheaper locations, tend to be a little bit less volume, but not necessarily. Right. Also, it depends on what kind of traffic there is. If it's a lot of vehicle traffic, then, obviously not as good as a lot of foot traffic. So, so you kind of have to look for that balance. And the area depends. So, some people have opened cafes in places that I never would have thought would be good, but they turned out to be amazing. So, yeah. I'm still attracted to the downtown area, and even though it's more expensive, having worked at famous chain where we all started a long time ago, I've seen the volumes and the numbers, so that's still attractive to me, even though it costs more. But
is that the chain that's all over downtown by any chance?
There's a few of them downtown.
Yeah. Yeah. With an Italian sounding name?
Yes. It depends also on your concept and what you want.
Yeah. So, okay, then let's decide on a concept then. I want to, I don't want to create something like a new Nemesis, right? I don't want to go huge. Their projects are amazing, but man, are they ever big? And, there's a lot of dollars involved in those. Let's say I'd like to go for probably something more like perhaps a cave in Kitsilano. So modest size, nothing too huge. I want to have, a reasonable amount of space for seating and things like that. So what would be, I don't know, how would I find a shop that kind of met my requirements? Do I just kind of wander around the neighborhoods and then decide, or what would be my next steps?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would do. I would look for a good balance of residential and commercial. Okay. So, at least some retail or offices close by, because if everyone goes to work, then everyone's gone.
Yeah, right.
But then you're kind of dependent on a lot of students that would come to study there, or moms with kids, and close to a community center would be good. Okay. So a strong community would be good. Citadella was really good for us because it was Ash kind of splits residential, and then on the other side is a lot of offices. So in the morning we would start off with neighbors leaving, for work, stopping by for coffee, and then people who work in all those areas would start coming in. So we were very steady throughout the day.
Nice.
And throughout the week, it was it was amazing that it was so steady, consistently over the years.
So how did you find that location then? Because that's another thing, is like, you can find the location you want, but how do you find the actual venue?
That was just by chance.
Oh, really?
It was very unexpected. We were actually looking at a location in Gastown, but for some reason that was taking forever. It just wasn't happening. It was just like getting stalled, and it was getting a little bit frustrating at that point because, our business plan was ready. We were just ready to go and just so eager to, to start. And our dream location just wasn't happening for some reason. And then that was around the Olympics, I think. So like everything was kind of on hold. And at that point, I just kind of started looking at any location that would pop up. Because after a while, when you're looking, you kind of know, what's out there. Right. And then as soon as a new one pops up, you notice it right away. So then we were going to see a location like right next to Cafeclub on Broadway.
Okay.
And then I would normally just go over the Cambie Bridge straight up, but instead I just took that turn, the off ramp, and then went up Ash and just ended up at the stop sign there and looked, and the house was there, and my partner Alex and I were just like, wow, look at that place. Like, I would love to have something like that. And then we just continued and, thought nothing else of it. And then I was also looking for some used equipment on like Craigslist, just to know what's out there. And like, as soon as we get the location, we're ready to go. And of all places, I see the business for sale on Craigslist. And then we just grabbed it right away.
So that kind of answers my next question then. Is it like you can, I guess, look for a venue and set up your own coffee shop inside of it that may have never existed there before, or you can buy a pre-existing business that I assume was already a coffee shop?
Yes, it was. There were actually two shops before. So like, all the installations were there, electrical and plumbing and everything was there.
Right.
We basically bought the assets of their
okay.
business. So like anything that was, that we could use. So we already had most of that equipment. We bought a new machine and grinders, obviously, and and just did a minor renovation. Like we painted everything, but no structural changes. So like it was fairly quick, and it was actually the only way we could do it because we had zero money. I don't even know how that happened. We made it happen.
When you opened, how much money did you have in your wallet left over?
I had like 30 grand in student loans.
Oof, okay.
It was like minus
money. Yeah.
But yeah, we had one of my partners, Alex, and I, we were both in the same boat, graduated at the same time, both got laid off after the 2008 recession, and we just had time, and something just like clicked. We just kind of went along with the idea and started writing the business plan and got very serious, and we just kept going every single day. It was very different from what we've been doing up until that point.
Well, so you highlighted something there, which was the business plan. So okay, let's just assume that we have we found a location we think is going to be great for a coffee shop. We may have even found a venue. Perhaps that's jumping the gun a little bit, but talk to me about the business plan and the importance of it.
It's very important because it helps you clarify a lot of things and gives you a more clear picture and a path of where you're going, and it's good for you to keep even after opening, and to use it as a frame of reference and to kind of keep on the right track. We also needed it to get financing because the banks were asking for that too. So like we didn't think of it as like something that we have to do because everyone's telling us to get a business plan, but like we were actually doing it because we needed to understand what we're doing a little bit better.
And how closely did your business plan stay the same?
It's just fairly close, yeah.
Really?
So, I mean, yeah, at least for the first couple of years.
That's awesome. My personal one was a disaster, and it went off the rails almost immediately. So that's great to hear.
Yeah. No, like even the financial projections were pretty close.
So then your business plan had, I assume, projections for the future in terms of how much money you're going to make, how much of an impact you're going to have in the local community, how much, how much of the pie you're going to take a bite out of, I assume, things like that.
Yeah, basically projections for 2 years.
For 2 years, right. Okay, so we've got a business plan together, and that one, I'm going to brush over that. We could dig into that and we could get really into the weeds with that one. But I think there's probably a ton of resources out there for understanding how to, how to do analysis and how to actually build a business plan. I can personally recommend Futurepreneur for that. They have an awesome builder that really helps kind of understand what needs to go into a business plan. And then also loan you money as well. Probably not for a coffee shop, but for various different businesses. Anyway, I digress. So we found our location. We've got our business plan together. What would be your recommendation on how to gather the money together to open a coffee shop?
Well, depends on your situation, but it's if you have family or that's kind of the easiest way. Our situation was unique because we were in our mid-20s, so like not a lot of people still have or have a lot of faith in you yet until you prove it.
Yeah.
So our parents came through a little bit. We were lucky to get a microloan from Van City, so they were the only one that would finance us. The commercial banks, they generally don't, because it's, especially when you're starting out with the first location, it's considered high risk. So they usually don't finance that unless you have some money of your own. And then my other partner, Dan, we refinanced one of his apartments. Okay. So we were able to get some money there.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like a breakthrough for us, because at that point we just didn't know how we were going to continue, as our other option fell through, and it was a lot of up and down before we opened, emotionally. So we were just kind of like trying to find any way that we could. Another thing that Susan and I discussed recently was crowdfunding.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's a possibility, and still kind of looking into that.
I can actually touch on that a little bit. I know this is your moment, but I've done digging into this myself, and there are different ways you can do it. So you can do an Indiegogo campaign, or you can do that kind of almost like you kind of have to have something to give them at the end of it style crowdfunding. There's also something called Front Funder, which I believe is a Vancouver company. And Front Funder is a crowdsource or crowdfunding platform that you can use to sell shares in your company. And I did do some digging for my own company with this one. It ended up being a little bit they took too much of the pie. I think they took something like 8% of your company just to be a part of it, plus 10 grand or something pretty high in fees. Lots of people have done it very, very successfully, especially if you have an audience. So I was thinking that, Vancouver Coffee Snob could be a great audience to reach out to and say, hey, I got this company. Do you want a part of it? But I ultimately decided that it was not for me, but it's an incredibly powerful tool to use if you use it right. I've seen some breweries use it really well.
Cool. Good to know.
Sorry, carry on.
Investors, obviously.
Yeah. Have you been involved with investors very much?
Not really. Not yet.
Right. No, that's the correct answer. Yeah, because you'll get big enough. I know you've got the skill set to it, and investors, if you want to get big quick, especially, they sort of are a necessary evil that you have to deal with eventually.
Yeah, or not necessarily. Depends on depends on who they are and their approach, and how good of a match it is. So
I just have this thing in my head where all investors are like, at the end of the day, they want a return on their money, and they want to really
that's the system.
Yeah, they want it as quickly as possible, and that you have to understand that. And so they may not be as aligned with your values of your company as much as you are, especially in the coffee industry, where there are several corners that can be cut, but it really shows in quality and things like that. For example, buying cheaper beans results in a worse cup of coffee. And that doesn't necessarily mean a lot to a lot of investors because they're looking at it from a purely fiscal perspective. So the other one that I can throw in there is obviously Futurepreneur that I mentioned as well. They have small loans for various different things. So I don't know if they loan for coffee shops. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that's something that people can look into as well.
Yep, for sure. Something interesting that you mentioned there. There's a really good book called Setting the Table by Danny Meyer. He has restaurants in New York, and one thing that he said was talking about investors and all the shareholders in his restaurants, and kind of the most important from first place to last. So first place for him is always his employees. So they come first, and then the second one are the customers. Third one are suppliers. Third one is the community, and then as long as you get all of those things right and take care of them really well, the investors will be happy as well. Yeah.
Just don't use that in your pitch to the investors. Tell them that they're number one, always.
I mean, it worked for him, so I don't know.
Yeah, nice. All right. So let's say we found our money. We have deep pockets. We have someone that will loan it to us. We have a way of building to, getting some money together to take our next step when we found our location. So we want to, let's make it difficult, and let's say that it's not a pre-existing business. It's just an empty shell. What is our next logical step now that we've acquired that shell? We've signed a lease or whatever, but now we've got to start building a coffee shop in it. What would be the next step?
So next step would be to get going as soon as possible, because you want to open doors as soon as possible. So getting the right team in place.
Okay.
Getting the, and I'm assuming that by that point you already have your business plan and you have a rough idea of who you're going to be working with. So contractors and, designers and,
So, well, let's talk about that then. How do we find I'm assuming designer comes before contractor. So how do we find a good designer?
There are a few around town. You can look at different coffee shops and just kind of figure out who does commercial and who's more aligned with your style, and what you like that they've done before, and then you reach out to them, get some quotes.
So would you think, let's say I go into a Revolver, actually those guys are lovely, so bad example, but let's pick a generic coffee shop, and I meet the owner and I ask about who designed the coffee shop. Are they very likely to tell you, or is that kind of a closely guarded secret and you have to do a bit of digging?
I don't see why it would be a secret.
Okay.
I've never really got that.
That was a question I thought I knew the answer to, and I just wanted to make sure, but because I would imagine that they'd be fine with that.
I mean, some people might, but I don't know. I've never really thought of it that way.
So when you found the designer, what does the design process look like? Do you just kind of tell them high level what you want and then they go off and do it? Or is it more of a kind of a hand holding experience in your opinion?
Well, there's a starting point. So it also depends on their experience with commercial and restaurants and what they've done. And if they haven't done it, then it has to be, you have to kind of keep a closer eye on it as well. And make sure that you stay within budgets.
Right.
You can go off and build amazing things, but how long is it gonna take you to make your money back? Right?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm assuming if a designer hasn't done a commercial building before, they'll potentially need to upskill on, I don't know, things like the fact that there needs to be several sinks in the build. There can't just be one sink. There needs to be certain types of power that go in. There needs to be plumbing and things like that. Is there any tips that you can give to people that kind of assist with that? Is there anything that they can do to learn more about that kind of thing before they start talking to a designer?
I mean, with designers, they obviously, if anyone has done any kind of design, they would have a pretty good idea of, you know, what the requirements are in terms of, you know, clearance and space, how much space you need to leave. But, you know, their job is to maximize the space, usable space, and, you know, to kind of, you know, depending on what you want to achieve. You know, if you want to really make a statement, then you would go spend a little bit more with materials, and you know, and you know, those things are everything's pretty expensive. Your money will go pretty fast.
Well, just looking at our town, just seeing the design of that and the beautiful, you know, the beautiful finishings and the I think, if I correct me wrong, it's like a marble top effect, if not marble on the bar, and it just looks like it cost a fortune in there.
Yeah. Yes, it did. So you know, like I said, you know, you kind of have to be realistic with how much you're spending and, you know, how long it's gonna take to make your money back. That was, I think, one of the questions in the chat as well. How long does it take to break even? So it depends on how much you spend. You know, those were two very different experiences for me. You know, with Cittadella, starting from, you know, zero money and having to do a lot of things ourselves, and, you know, some amazing people helping us out unexpectedly, and, like, you know, just being able to save a lot of money there. That was one experience. And then the other experience was, you know, like, you kind of have to be careful with how much you're spending, because my job is not guaranteed. If we spend too much money, like, how am I going to be able to make your money back?
Right. So. And also not giving yourself a little buffer at the end of it as well is you know, if you spend too much and don't have any way of dealing with any drama that comes after you open, you know, a supplier that goes down and you need to all of a sudden buy extra things from someone, or a machine that breaks, or who knows what else.
Yeah. Another thing is, if you have a little bit of money and if you're not careful with it, no one else is gonna be careful with it. So, like, your contractors are gonna be like, oh, anything can be done. You know, like, they just see, like, you just see big dollar signs in their eyes, and, like, you know, they're not gonna look, they don't have your best interest. They just want to make money.
Fair. Well, on that subject then, let's talk about contractors. You found your designer, you've got your design. What would be your advice on finding a decent contractor? Because that is a scary area for a lot of people because of how many cowboys there are out there.
Yeah, it's not easy to find. So if you know someone who is good, you know, keep them. Not to say that, you know, there aren't really good people who do amazing work. But when you're starting out from zero, you're not. First of all, you don't know a lot. You don't have a lot of that confidence. So you're kind of figuring things out as you go, and, you know, it's easy to kind of fall into the trap.
Fair. And I've seen a lot of people opening their first coffee shop, and you go and see it halfway through, and there's this like confident look because they love what they're seeing kind of transpire, but there's this like slight flash of panic behind their eyes as well, where they're like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing really, and I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. And I don't think I think that's just practice that will get you out of that.
Yeah, I mean, over time you kind of learn how to watch out for certain things, and yeah, some you know, there are people who are really good and who will help you, you know, with a lot of things, and yeah, I think that's kind of, you know, luck of the draw. And a lot of designers also have people that they work with, so that's always good.
Awesome.
That they've worked on multiple projects on. So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our contractor in place. Let's say they're building away, and you know, we've designed this perfect coffee shop. Assumedly, we've got some equipment that we need to now fill it with. So the one thing I'm noticing right now is there is lots and lots and lots of different equipment out there. There are mod bars that take the espresso machine and hide most of it underneath the counter. There are beast 4 group La Marzocco's like you had have at our town. There are all sorts of different things in between. So maybe we can kind of take it, I guess, step by step and talk about the different types of equipment. So espresso machine. Is there a reason why you would choose something like a mod bar over kind of a freestanding espresso machine?
I think the aesthetic is the number one there.
Okay.
It's very minimal and clean.
So that's a design reason. There's no kind of technical reason per se.
I mean, they're also good machines.
Okay. Yeah. Of course. So from what I understand, they're linear PBs, I believe, most of them anyway, under the hood. So I suppose when, you can either have the one that sits on the desk and you can have the one that sits under the desk, it really does boil down to a design aesthetic reason there. I actually don't know this, but do you know if there's a massive price difference between the two of them, or are they more or less the same?
Mod bar, I believe, is a little bit more.
Okay.
But I don't have the prices, even though I should have them, because I am also a reseller of those.
Oh, you are? Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I just need to get my price lists. But
that's okay. We can people can contact you afterwards. We don't need.
Sure.
Besides, someone will watch this in a month's time, and the prices will have changed anyway. So that's fine. So is there a reason why I shouldn't just go to Costco sells espresso machines? The reason why I shouldn't just go and buy one of those and stick it in the shop and use that?
I mean, you need a commercial machine.
Okay.
You can't go with residential. It's not going to be able to handle those volumes. And
so why is that?
Marzocco and Simonelli and their workhorses, they're built for high volumes and consistency.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So then I guess we've decided that we got to spend the money on a expensive machine. So let's get a little bit nuanced then. There is, now I probably should have looked up the names of them, but there are these Simonelli espresso machines that you see them in restaurants, and they're square, and they have a like a look to them that never really seems to appear in high-end coffee shops. It seems to be the lower-end coffee shops, or the more basic, let's call it, coffee shops and restaurants. And then when you actually get into the kind of the higher-end stuff, you're getting into the Eagles. Now, why do those higher-end espresso machines end up in the really good coffee shops? What makes them so much better than their base models? Because they're commercial. They're both commercial machines. Just seems like you're more likely to see an Eagle, for example, in a coffee shop.
I mean, there have been a lot of developments with Simonelli and Marzocco over the last 10 years. So they're kind of competing, and each company's coming out with better systems and like volumetric and to improve the consistency of coffee. So there, when we opened Citadella, we started with we I think got the first Adonis, the Victoria Arduino that was just after the takeover of that. So that was a great machine that we got a really good deal on. But then so many other machines have come out since then that are better and more advanced.
So what does more advanced mean? What's in them that makes them advanced?
Better technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give me some examples of technology?
Well, with PB, Linea, you have different ways of programming it.
Okay.
So you can do volumetric, you can do different ways of extracting the coffee to make it easier for cafes with more staff and
So I'm assuming you can do things like you can control temperatures inside of them. And
absolutely,
water flow and
water flow, temperature. Yep.
Volumetric is weighing stuff, right? Is that right?
Yes, getting the weight.
Okay. All right. So let's assume we went. I've always wanted a linear. I want a linear mini at home. But whatever. Let's just say I've won the lottery. We're going for a full PB style, like let's call it a 2 or 3 group espresso machine. So we've got that in place. we've got all the you know, I don't know, the plumbing done for it and the electrics in, all that kind of stuff. Next step would be grinders, or grinder or grinders. So I would say that in my experience, I typically see coffee shops, they have a grinder for espresso, and maybe they have a grinder for decaf espresso, and then they might have a grinder for a miscellaneous espresso. But and I think everybody knows that. But I see every now and then, I see that big, tall EK43 grinder that kind of looks like a bit like a crane. And I see people using that for espresso as well. So I guess where my lack of knowledge comes in here is, why would you favor an EK43 grinder, the big crane thing, versus one of the square boxes that you typically see as a normal espresso grinder?
Those are really good grinders. So a lot of cafes use them for pour overs and batch brews. So more accurate.
Okay. Yep. So it wouldn't be a typical espresso grinder then?
No, it's not a typical espresso. No.
Gotcha. Okay. And so the actual espresso grinders then, is there any one particular grinder that you favor in your coffee shops?
I'm used to working on the Simonelli grinders. Yeah, those were, not sure why we decided on those versus the Malconi, but I like those. Yeah, those are easy to use and consistent.
Okay, right. So that I was going to ask, what's the reasoning behind it? Consistency.
Consistency, and they're very easy to use. Yeah, easy to change the doses.
So consistency is probably, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to feign ignorance here. Consistency is probably a pretty important part of your workflow. Can you tell me why it's important to be consistent?
With grinding specifically?
Yeah,
or in general?
Grinding. Let's start with grinding, but I think that this can kind of relate to everything else as well.
I mean, you have so many variables, right, with coffee. So basically, you want to isolate those variables and make them constant. So, you know, weighing all the shots and making sure that you have a grinder that's consistent is important, because it's going to affect the taste of your coffee. Yeah. And also, you know, when you have so many different, if you have a higher volume cafe with a bunch of different baristas, then, you know, everyone will do things a little bit differently. So, you know, especially then, you want to make sure that you have systems that get people to do things a certain way.
And is a consistent grinder, does that just mean that you set it and that's it, you're good forever?
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Because other factors will affect it. The temperature and humidity and how fresh your coffee is. And, it changes all the time, so you always have to keep an eye on it.
So let's dig into that a little bit more then. Like this, I like this kind of talk about consistency and understanding the variables here. So it changes over time. So one of the skill sets, I guess, you're going to have to learn is how to change the variables, and how to I'm going to use the term dial in, because I learned that as the correct term there. So how would you recommend somebody approach putting processes in place to make sure that you are able to, you know, maintain your standard by changing those variables?
Standardizing the way you do things. So, like, you know, getting people to do basically compulsively. And, you know, when you train them, first you have to start somewhere. So I would write everything out and do things step by step in the beginning, and then when you train people, you train them the exact same way. Over and over again until it becomes a habit. And then it's going to vary between different coffee shops and baristas, and, like, you know, it's not easy to change habits. So when you're training someone new, but if you decide to do things a certain way, you have to see it through.
So on that subject then, so like the training itself, are you talking about training everyone in the shop to be essentially an expert on coffee, and understanding how to dial it in? Or is the idea that, you know, there's one person that's in charge of it all, and, you know, it's something that they should be in charge of?
There should be someone who is going to be in charge of it all, but in my experience, it's always good to have people cross-trained.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to start from. I've hired people who you know were baristas and they were hired to be baristas, and then also I've had people who were cross-trained to do everything else. Mm-hmm. So that's always been worked better for me, because the barista only people tend to only stay in bar and they don't do anything else.
Right.
Because that's the expectation. They don't expect to do anything else, almost as if like that's only their job. But it's not. Like, you know, it has to be team effort.
Well, okay. So oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt then. I feel like you might.
No, that's okay. So, like, you know, in my case, it's always been better to start at one place and then to kind of learn everything else in the cafe and get a better sense of the flow and, you know, how everything else is done. And by that time, you already get familiar with the place where everything is kept and customers as well. When you start working in a new place, you don't know anyone, but customers who are regulars there, they know when someone's new.
Right.
You know? So yeah, learn everything first, and then coffee would usually come last.
Awesome.
In my shop.
So how do you build that team then? You obviously have various different people that do various different roles. This is actually, from my perspective, I hear this as the biggest gripe from coffee shops, is that it's very hard to find the right people. So how would you go about doing that?
Where to find them?
Yeah. How do you build that team?
Slowly.
Okay.
Start with one and then, you know, expand. You also have to have your stuff in order to be able to keep good people. Mm-hmm. If you're not serious about it, if you're not doing a good job, then, you know, people that are coming from different shops, then they will see that as well.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you know, and I'm talking about the beginning, right? If they feel like they know more than you, then, like, you know, it's kind of like this balance of power dynamic that can get a little bit weird.
Right.
But yeah, you start somewhere. Start with one person and then keep looking.
Okay.
And I've always been very careful with who I bring in, because it all has to gel together, right? Like, people that you hire, I've always been mindful of how good of a fit they are with the rest of the team, instead of just getting anyone, you know, to work. Well,
that implies to me that then you need to develop a culture internally.
Yeah.
And how would you? I mean, do you have any steps that you go through in order to work out what culture you want? Is it the same for every shop? How does that work?
No, it's not the same for every shop. I think the people that have done probably the best job in the city is Nemesis, you know, with that.
Right.
They're especially known for culture, and, you know, and when you go there, you can see everyone's like super friendly and everyone's on the same page. So
yeah.
I mean, it starts with your values and, you know, how you treat people as well, and what you want to provide to your customers, right? Mm-hmm. How important is it for you to, you know, to give good service? And, you know, like, everyone throws that term around, good service, but what is good service to you? You know, like, I've walked into a coffee shop so many times, and, you know, baristas have seemed very uninterested, or like they start schooling you on things.
Yeah.
You know, so there's that attitude, like, so that comes from you as an owner, I think.
So is this something that you should just have in your head, or is it worth, you know, writing it down and putting it in your business plan?
I think it's absolutely worth writing it down and knowing exactly what you want, what you're looking for.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're looking for, then you will, you know, be in a situation where you have to just take whatever comes your way.
I agree entirely. Yeah, that's good advice. All right. So let's say we've started to build our small team in our little coffee shop where we've found some equipment. Actually, one thing I do want to go loop back to with equipment is how important is batch brew coffee, in your opinion? Why don't we just have Americanos? What's the point in batch brew?
It's just so much faster.
Okay.
Yeah. Also depends on your location. If it's higher volume, people just want to be in and out.
So that then builds on the question: what about pour overs? Is that really the kind of thing that will bring in, the right customers over a batch brew system?
Pour overs. So pour overs are more high end for people who like coffee, who are more experienced with coffee, and who want to taste different coffees. So it's not where most of your money will come from, but also if you want to look serious as a coffee shop and who know what you're doing, then you have to have it.
Right.
And it's a good opportunity to showcase some amazing coffees that are everywhere.
I agree.
Yeah.
What's your thought on automation of the pour over world?
I've had a really good experience with SP9s, and they're quick, they're expensive, but
yeah,
they're very quick, very consistent.
Very
cool. I love those.
Yeah. I remember when it was like when you first opened our town, and I remember trying. I think it was like Hero from Modus, and I'd been the day before to Modus, and I'd had the same coffee, and I tried it at your place, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to tell Sharif, who's the owner of Modus, that it's better at your place from the auto pour over. And don't get me wrong, it was mind blowing at his place, but I remember thinking like, this came because that was one of the first experiences I'd had with auto pour overs, or certainly paying any attention to them. And I was blown away by how good it was. I was now a 100% convert. If I was to ever open a coffee shop, stick in an auto pour over. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you don't have to stand. It doesn't take one of your baristas out of the game for those few minutes.
Yeah.
You just grind it and start, and it'll be, when it's done, you can do something else. So like, if it's a higher volume cafe, then definitely that's the way to go.
But then I suppose the thing to remember, and this goes back to the question earlier from James, your return on investment from buying something like that then goes through the roof versus a $20 pour over and a $20 glass carafe to make a pour over by hand. So there's some analysis that I'm sure you have to do there.
Yeah, it's true. It's not through the roof. So like, it's not that expensive. It's not going to break your business.
Okay.
You're also increasing productivity a little bit. So
right.
But certain things I would go all out on, but you can also be careful with other ways to save money.
So how much do they cost, those auto pour over? Like, let's just say a single auto pour over.
It's the same boiler for two. So if you add a second head, you can use the same boiler. I think it was about 7,000.
That's not as much as I would have thought. Yeah. I'm actually surprised. I figured that they were
something like that. Mm-hmm.
I've seen the price list for the pour steadies, which are these big square things. There's one in Quantum, and
there's
one in Abbotsford somewhere. And those things
looks really cool.
They look amazing, and they're really entertaining to watch because the little spout comes out and goes across the line of filters. I believe they're in the tens of thousands though for those ones. So, okay, so let's continue with building our coffee shop, right? So we've got our staff. We've got our culture in place. I'm going to get one of the questions pulled out of the Zoom chat right now, and I'm going to say, do you advise to roast your own coffee or buy somebody else's? I think my cat just fell off of the...
That was hilarious.
Something in the background.
Hilarious.
So I got called out for not having the cat in the previous few Zoom meetings. And so I put her here, but I think she must have stretched or something.
Yeah, she moved and then she just stumbled over the edge. That's quite funny.
She's a bit of a dope. I'm going to just move this back up because I feel terrible. All right. And now she's going to clamber. Now she's awake. She's going to clamber all over the place. And I should probably hold her up. She's kind of derailed everything right now. This is Deborah. hopefully she'll go back to sleep, but we might be in for a cacophony of meows coming up right now. She's a Siamese, so she's very noisy. Okay, going back to the question then. Thanks, Debs. Do you advise you roast your own coffee as you move forward with the coffee shop? So I guess the question is like, what do you decide to do? Do you roast or do you buy from somebody else?
I went with someone else's coffee, and I think that's the easier way to go, because roasting, obviously there's a lot more to roasting and getting it right.
Yeah.
And more equipment to buy. One of the really cool things that Matt from Prototype is doing is, they have those micro roasters, and they're doing a really good job. With roasting, so you can definitely do it that way. They're pretty much, they're different for doing things like that. It's very cool. For me, it was, it was a whole different thing that I didn't really know much about back then. So I went with, with using someone else's coffee.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably what most coffee shops do. I've actually spoken to people kind of at length about why you would not roast your own coffee. And generally the best answer I've found from that is that roasting is almost like a completely separate business.
It is, yeah.
It's an investment in equipment. It's an investment in a skill set. You need a roaster, and a roaster might not also be a barista. In fact, a lot of the time they just want to put their headphones in and roast. And then you are roasting small volumes to start with, unless you can get wholesale accounts, and in which case getting a wholesale account is taking you away from running a coffee shop as well. So you're genuinely running two businesses.
I mean, once you're up to a certain number of locations, then it makes more sense. But
a good example would be someone like Pallet. I see as they did start roasting right from the start, but they've expanded quick enough to really benefit from having a roastery, and they've got wholesale accounts. But they have salespeople for the roastery. They have dedicated roasters that do not work behind the bar. And so it's they're also an enormous business. So
yeah, they're huge. Yeah, same with 49th.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, 49th is a beast of a company. That's not even can't even compare Pallet's load. Although they are starting to they're starting to really get up there, and their roast is huge. So, okay, let's just say that we decide not to roast. Maybe that's a completely separate conversation to have on another Zoom session with someone that owns a roastery. But we decide to go with buying coffee from someone. How would you advise people decide what that coffee is? Because there's a lot out there. There's a lot of different suppliers.
Yeah, there are a lot of people doing really good things. So it depends on what you want to do. I chose to have one steady coffee for consistency. And then I also wanted to showcase what's out there. So that was kind of my multi-roaster rotation.
Okay.
Because there's so many good ones, and I just wanted to try different ones and rotate. So price is going to be one of them, but also, there's so many factors. Obviously, the most important is the taste and, how they do things. I look for something that's cool and exciting, and, they're obviously, their popularity will will help you with your shop, and that'll itself will draw people in. Every time we've switched the coffee at our town, certain people came just to try that coffee.
Right. That's very much a me thing. I do that.
Yeah. There are a few people that go to try, including me. I go to try different coffees.
So have you tried coffees and then just decided, I like that coffee, I want it in my coffee shop? Or is it a case of, maybe somebody has asked for it and you decided to bring it in for that reason? Or kind of what's the driver behind you choosing certain coffees?
I mean, you generally know who's doing what around town. And then kind of start with a basic list, and then start reaching out to them. And then you go to try the coffees. It also depends on your relationship with them.
Right.
Things, the rapport that you have.
So that begs the question then, is the price they give you the price that they give you, or is there wiggle room a negotiation that can be done for buying coffee?
I'm not big on negotiating those things because like I know those people that are working hard and doing good things. Price either works or it doesn't for you. Like I personally wouldn't negotiate something like that, especially because like I only had them as features. If it's a longer term, then maybe a little bit, and like and all the roasters they're mindful of that too. Like they know that it has to work for you. And if it's if it's a decent account, they will give you a good price.
So same question then, but going back to equipment, is that up for negotiation, or is that still a 20 grand machine is a 20 grand machine?
It depends who you're going through, and like there might be a little bit of room.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Good to know, because you're starting a business. You want to trim every little bit of, or make every dollar go as far as possible. I guess.
For sure. I mean, with my consulting clients, like I'll always do my best to to make it fit within their budget.
Awesome.
And as much as I can.
So, all right, we have got our coffee. Let's just say we've decided on a nice local roaster. Let's talk. We're running low on time here because we're getting towards the top of the hour, and I'd like to keep these towards an hour. Let's keep this coffee, and let's not mention food, because I feel like that's a Pandora's box that we can open there, especially given how incredible your food program is at our town when you were there.
Thank you.
I do want to talk about community though, because one of the things that I was in awe of whenever you've created a coffee shop is your ability to grow a community, and a community can include everyone that walks in the front door, the businesses that are around it, and just kind of propping that up. So it's a really difficult one to understand where to get started, because you can go knock on doors and you can go, I don't know, talk to your customers and things like that. But the thing that I look at and I see as potentially a really difficult thing is understanding what the community wants and what that community is, because it varies wildly from Kitsilano to East Van to Surrey to North Van. How would you, if you were to open a coffee shop right now, how would you get to know that community?
I mean, that's something that you learn over time, right? Like one thing that works regardless of the area is like, don't be a dick.
Right.
Be nice to people.
Sure.
Be nice to people. Do it for the right reasons. Like, know why you're doing it. Have passion when you're doing it. Don't just do it for the money, because that's like, that will come through. It's not the right reason to do something. Be honest about what you're doing. Do it genuinely. Because those things, that's real, like that's be good to people, and genuinely good to your customers. And if you want to build that community, people appreciate that.
I like it.
Basically. And then over time you learn who is who, and like it's pretty cool, man. When you're in a location long enough, you get to see different things, and like you get to see people meeting there for the first time, and then like over the years their relationship evolving, and like they're becoming friends. You see like kids who are just born, like we were there for 7 years, right? So after 7 years, these are not kids anymore.
Yeah, right.
And then like customers who are kind of towards the end of their life as well, and like there's so much to it. There's so many. But it's really cool. I think that was one of my favorite things, just seeing so many different people and forming those relationships and getting to know them better.
Do you think a coffee shop can be successful if someone doesn't care about community?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it'll be colder. I think. I mean, just off the top of my head, it'll feel colder, and like I'm thinking like more higher volume.
Yeah.
But then you're still there every day, and like your employees are still there, so like you will still have that sense of community, even if it's higher volume. If you don't care about it and just doing your own thing, then we're talking about relationships among people, right? So like customers, and and if you have steady staff, they're gonna form those relationships no matter what.
Right. Okay.
And if they don't care about community, that'll show. They won't last very long. Because who wants to keep people like that, right?
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
So
awesome. Okay. Like I said, we're getting towards the top of the hour. I want to talk, before we end this, I want to talk a little bit about your company, because this is something I'm really excited to see progress and grow. But you're fairly new, because you've just set everything up and stepped back from our town. Tell me a little bit about what we can expect from Cafeclub Consulting. What kind of services do you offer?
So we're full service consultancy. So basically everything that we talked about today. So starting from scratch, getting the right strategy together, putting the business plan together, getting the location, equipment. I'm also, like I said, a reseller of Lamberzucco and Simonelli and those major brands and grinders as well. And then project management as well. Okay, let me open my list and focus. Yeah, so like, helping with location search and criteria, and like, helping with lease negotiations, things like that. That's very important that we didn't really discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, so making sure that you have a good lease, because you can it's something that you have to think about long term, right? You can get screwed out of a lease in 5-10 years.
I didn't know. Okay, but that makes sense. Yeah, because you're signing up for a really long time.
Yeah, you're looking at like at least 10 even 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So just to kind of dig into that, then, do people really sign 15-year leases for a coffee shop?
Yeah. Yep. That's what I had for Citadel. So 3 5-year terms.
Okay.
So it's typically 2, but we had 3. So like, that's something that we sold. That was a part of what we were able to sell with the shop.
Yeah.
Is that adds to valuable? Goodwill. Yeah. Okay. Because we sold halfway through our 15-year term. So we were there for just over 7 years. And then the next owner still has 7 years before they would have to renegotiate. And, there are little things that are important. So like, when the term is up, what's the next price going to be? So how do you determine that price? Is it going to be what the landlord wants? Those things have to be clear in the beginning. So you're not surprised and, your rent doesn't go up by, double, and then you can't make it. Right. So, you have to be careful that it's mutually agreed on market rate, and not something that your landlord can just throw at you.
Because he or she is going to want to get the best bang for their buck. They're going to want to make out best or as well as they can in that situation. So absolutely. Really interesting, because I didn't even think that was, I figured it was like house rent. It's $1,500 a month. Probably not going to be able to negotiate. Maybe net at the moment, but wow. Okay.
There's room to negotiate that too, right? And not all landlords are bad. My experience with landlords has been really good. Actually, it's been the opposite. And they understood that it was in their best interest to have someone who's going to do a good job with their property, and that was kind of how it worked. So we were lucky, but not everyone is like that. Yeah, I know some people that have had to close their businesses because it didn't make sense for them anymore to be there.
Wow.
You've put so much of yourself into that, and to see no way out is, other than to close, is heartbreaking. I can't imagine what that must feel like. And just to go on, lease, project management, managing designers, contractors, equipment. So like bar design and workflow is super important, because if you're working for so many years, like you start counting your steps after a while, and like, you want to make sure that it's efficient, that you're not wasting time, that you're not like making unnecessary steps and movements that are going to add up over the years. You do certain things so many times throughout the day. Can you imagine multiplying it like throughout the years? And just being careful with like how the small things, picking the right equipment, having the right level of your bar, like there are injuries that come as a result of people working with coffee so much every day. Back injuries, like sciatic nerve injuries, and wrists. And so those things are real, and it's hard to foresee them if you haven't done it.
Sure.
And then we talked about consistency. So it's super important to have systems, to have things clearly written out that will help you with training, that help people stay within the same, to do things a certain way. Easier to train, it's easier for your staff to know what to expect.
That's pretty exhaustive.
So basically, from the concept, the idea, all the way to opening day and beyond, ongoing support with training.
I'm assuming things like barista training as well.
Absolutely.
How's your latte art game these days?
You know what? I just pull espressos. So that's been happening since COVID started. I haven't poured anything since then.
Yeah, I see. What do you have in the background there? That's a Breville.
Breville, yeah.
Is that the one with the grinder built in?
It's the one without the grinder.
With the what grinder?
Without the grinder.
Without the grinder.
Yeah, so it's nice. Like BX 920.
The dual boiler. Yeah, I have that one.
So it's just fantastic. Like the one with the grinder, but without it.
Yeah.
I have a separate grinder.
Yeah, that's pretty legit home setup then. So, okay. Because I'm hoping that one of these shops that you help open hosts some latte art competitions.
Yeah.
And,
I wanted to do it, but we just didn't get a chance.
Yeah. I think that's not going to happen for a really long time, actually, with the way things are at the moment, unless it's outside. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, that sounds pretty exhaustive, what you do. How can people get in contact with you if they want to chat to you or even hire you?
Through my website. So cafeclub.consulting, or social media, or Filip at cafeclub.consulting.
What's your social media? It's at cafeclub.consulting.
That's it, yeah.
I like it. It's uniform across, including the domain name as
well.
I
love that too.
That's great. Yeah, you don't see that very often.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, mate, it has been an absolute honor chatting to you today. I'm really excited to see where your company goes. And obviously, one of the important parts of your company is probably introducing coffee shops to, amazing bloggers. And hopefully making sure that they get taken care of with some free coffee. And, the only reason I do this, it's really important that I get free shit all the time. I'm just kidding. But no, it's jokes aside, I can't wait to see what coffee shops that you help open, because it makes my life easier, because I get to write awesome stuff about awesome coffee shops. So thank you for chatting to me today. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the future holds for you, mate.
Me too, man. Thank you so much for having me on, and it was great chatting.
Yeah, likewise. I'm going to stick around.
To Susan and who else is here?
Susan had to go by the looks of it.
Okay.
But I see D. I'm not sure who that is, and then James is still around.
Yeah, James.
So what we'll do is we'll sign off, and this is where the YouTube video will end. But we'll kind of relax it now, and anyone can kind of jump in and ask some questions in the chat, and we can just kind of have a little informal chat for a few minutes. So awesome! Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you.
Okay.